Rain fell like liquid silver on the small gathering at Mountain Pine Cemetery. Eleanor Wilson stood apart from the huddle of black umbrellas, her pregnant belly a stark curve beneath her rain-soaked dress. At 42, she had become accustomed to standing alone. But today the solitude cut deeper as they lowered her grandmother, Martha Collins, into the cold, wet earth. 6-year-old Emma pressed against her mother's side, small fingers gripping Eleanor's coat with quiet desperation. At their feet, Bandit, a graying shepherd mixed with eyes too knowing for a mere animal, stood sentinel, his warm body leaning protectively against Eleanor's legs. Eleanor closed her eyes against the sting of tears, her grandmother's final words echoing in her mind. Martha had clasped her hand with surprising strength that last day, her voice clear despite her 93 years. When all seems lost, the cabin will show you that you're never truly alone. The rain intensified as the small procession moved toward waiting cars. Eleanor caught fragments of whispered conversations, words not meant for her ears but finding them nonetheless. Poor thing, 8 months pregnant and already has one child to raise alone. David's accident was almost 2 years ago now, wasn't it? First her husband, now her grandmother. And I heard the bank is foreclosing on her house next month. Eleanor straightened her spine, wrapping one arm around Emma and the other protectively over her swollen belly. Bandit pressed closer, a low rumble in his throat as if he understood every word. Have you ever felt the weight of others' judgment? The way people look at you when they think you've lost everything? Eleanor was experiencing exactly that. Standing in the rain, pregnant, with a small child and a loyal dog, having just lost her last living relative. Let's continue following her journey and see what unexpected turns await. The reading of the will took place in Martha's grand Victorian home, a place that had always felt like a museum to Eleanor, rather than somewhere her spirited grandmother truly belonged. Emma sat quietly beside her, sketching in her ever-present notebook, while Bandit settled at their feet with the patient dignity of old dogs. Richard and Catherine Collins, distant cousins who had barely spoken to Martha in the final years of her life, sat opposite, their expressions carefully neutral, yet somehow predatory. Family had gathered like vultures, Eleanor thought, then immediately chastised herself for the uncharitable comparison. Mr. Peterson, Martha's attorney for over 40 years, adjusted his spectacles and began to read. The Victorian house went to Richard, the summer cottage and investment portfolio to Catherine, various artworks and heirlooms to assorted family members who had shown little interest in Martha while she lived. And to my beloved granddaughter, Eleanor Wilson, Mr. Peterson continued, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. I leave my cabin in Blue Ridge, along with the surrounding 200 acres of woodland, and a monthly stipend of $2,000 for its maintenance. A beat of silence, then Catherine's perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth to cover what might have been a laugh. The hunting cabin? That dilapidated old shack? Richard didn't bother hiding his amusement. Well, at least it's shelter. You'll need it in your condition, cousin. Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks even as Emma looked up from her drawing, confused by the adult's reactions. Only Bandit seemed unperturbed, his tail thumping once against the oriental carpet, as if in quiet approval. After the others had departed, Mr. Peterson approached Eleanor privately. From his weathered leather briefcase, he withdrew an ancient iron key with intricate engravings along its shaft. Your grandmother was most specific about your inheritance, he said, pressing the key into Eleanor's palm. Its weight felt substantial, almost warm against her skin. She insisted you would understand in time. It seems cruel, Mr. Peterson, Eleanor whispered, her voice catching. She knew my situation. The elderly attorney's eyes softened. Martha Collins was many things, but cruel was never one of them. She spoke of that cabin differently than her other properties. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. She called it her true legacy. That evening in the small rented house they would soon lose, Eleanor packed what little they could take. Her 20 years as a nurse had taught her to be methodical, even in crisis. She sorted medications and first aid supplies first, a professional habit she couldn't shake. Emma helped organize their belongings with the solemn efficiency of a child who had already learned that life could change in an instant. "Will there be other children at the cabin?" Emma asked, carefully folding her favorite sweater. "I don't think so, sweetheart. It's quite remote." Emma nodded, her small face serious. "That's okay. I had a dream about it. There's a stream where Bandit can swim, and flowers that grow even when it's cold." Eleanor paused in her packing, a chill running down her spine. "You've dreamed about the cabin, but you've never been there." Emma shrugged with the easy acceptance of childhood. "Great-grandma showed it to me in my dreams. She said it's been waiting for us." Before Eleanor could respond, Bandit padded into the room carrying his tattered blanket in his mouth, dropping it pointedly into the open suitcase, as if to say he too had made his choice about what to bring. Dawn broke over misty mountains as Eleanor navigated the increasingly narrow roads leading deep into the Blue Ridge wilderness. The Honda protested the steep inclines, its engine straining beneath the weight of their meager possessions. In the back seat, Emma slept peacefully, her head resting against Bandit's graying flank. Eleanor had only visited the cabin once as a child, a brief summer afternoon now hazy with time. She remembered Martha pointing out medicinal plants and telling stories of women who found refuge in these woods generations ago. At 10 years old, Eleanor had dismissed them as fairy tales. The hand-drawn map Martha had left led them deeper into the forest, past landmarks that seemed to appear exactly where the faded ink indicated they would. A lightning-struck oak, a peculiar rock formation resembling a sleeping bear, a creek crossing where the water ran crystal clear over smooth stones. "We're close," Eleanor murmured, more to herself than to her sleeping passengers. As if in response, Bandit lifted his head, ears suddenly alert, his tail beginning a tentative wag. The cabin appeared around the final bend, nestled in a small clearing embraced by ancient trees. From the outside, it matched Eleanor's expectations. A modest timber structure with a stone chimney and wraparound porch, weathered by decades of mountain seasons. What she hadn't expected was the sense of welcome that washed over her as she parked the car, nor the hanging baskets of thriving herbs that flanked the front door, impossible in the early spring chill, nor the thin curl of smoke rising from the chimney. Bandit was the first out of the car, barking with uncharacteristic enthusiasm as he circled the clearing, nose to the ground, as if reading a story written in sense. Emma woke, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and gasped. "It's exactly like in my dreams," she whispered, her small face alight with wonder. Eleanor approached the cabin with caution, the iron key heavy in her hand. The lock turned with surprising ease, the door swinging inward to reveal what should have been impossible. Instead of the musty abandonment she expected, warmth enveloped them. A fire crackled merrily in the stone hearth. The main room was clean and welcoming, comfortable furniture arranged before the fire, shelves lined with books, a dining table set with a blue ceramic vase filled with fresh wildflowers. "But how?" Eleanor whispered, one hand protectively covering her belly. Emma stepped inside with the fearless curiosity of childhood, turning in a slow circle. "Great-grandma said the cabin would be ready for us." Bandit trotted past them both, making directly for the hearthrug, where he turned 3 times and settled with a contented sigh, as if returning to a long-familiar spot. Exploring further revealed more impossibilities. The kitchen pantry stocked with fresh provisions, a bathroom with modern fixtures despite the cabin's rustic exterior. And most unsettling of all, a handcrafted wooden cradle in the main bedroom, positioned near the window where morning light would flood in. On the bedside table lay an envelope bearing Eleanor's name in Martha's distinctive handwriting. With trembling fingers, she broke the wax seal, an emblem of a tree with roots as expansive as its branches. My beloved Eleanor, the letter began, if you are reading this, then you have found your way home. Yes, home, though you've never truly lived here before today. This cabin has been waiting for you, just as I knew you would one day need it. The letter continued, explaining what must have seemed a cruel joke, leaving Eleanor a remote cabin while the others received mansions and millions. The family believes I built my fortune through savvy real estate investments and corporate dealings. This is only partially true. The reality, my darling girl, is that this cabin is the source of everything I built, not merely as a place of refuge, though it has been that. This land and this dwelling holds secrets and gifts that cannot be measured in dollars. Martha described living two lives. The public Martha Collins, formidable businesswoman and family matriarch, and her true self, steward of these woods and keeper of knowledge passed through generations of Collins women. The cabin may seem small from outside, Martha wrote, but you've surely noticed already that spaces expand within. This is no trick of perspective, but the first hint that ordinary rules bend here. That evening, as Emma slept soundly in a bedroom that seemed to have been prepared specifically for a 6-year-old girl, complete with shelves of children's books and a handmade quilt depicting woodland creatures, Eleanor discovered more of the cabin's secrets. A panel in the living room wall concealed a hidden compartment containing a leather-bound book entitled Whispers of the Keeper. Opening it revealed handwritten entries dating back to 1742, beginning with Elizabeth Collins, who had fled accusations of witchcraft to find sanctuary in these mountains. Have you ever discovered something that completely changed your understanding of your family history? Eleanor was about to uncover generations of secrets hidden within the cabin walls. Each woman before her had faced challenges and found strength in this special place. What would you do if you discovered such a powerful legacy? Let's continue following Eleanor's remarkable journey. Entry after entry chronicled the lives of Collins, women who had sought refuge in the cabin during times of need. The Civil War, the Great Depression, personal tragedies and transformations. Each woman had added her knowledge to the growing grimoire, medicinal recipes, weather predictions, methods for communicating with the forest itself. Eleanor read until her eyes grew heavy, one hand resting on her belly where her daughter kicked vigorously, as if responding to the stories of the women who had come before. The following days brought discoveries that challenged everything Eleanor thought she knew about reality. Emma led her to a spring hidden in the northern woods, water so pure it seemed to glow in certain light. Drinking it eased Eleanor's pregnancy discomforts more effectively than any medication she'd encountered in her 20 years as a nurse. This water, Eleanor murmured, cupping another handful, contains minerals I've never seen in combination before. Her medical training made her skeptical, but the evidence was undeniable. Her swollen ankles had reduced, her back pain eased, and she slept more soundly than she had in months. Bandit revealed an uncanny ability to sense approaching visitors hours before their arrival, positioning himself on the porch and staring down the path with focused intensity whenever someone was coming. Most remarkable were the 7 boundary stones Emma insisted on finding, each carved with symbols matching the drawings she had been creating since before they arrived. They keep us safe, she explained simply, running small fingers over ancient engravings. Great-grandma says they remember who belongs here. Eleanor was examining one such stone when she heard vehicles approaching. Bandit was already standing alert on the porch, his posture stiff with warning. Richard and Catherine emerged from a luxury SUV, followed by men in hard hats carrying surveying equipment. Behind them, a black sedan disgorged 3 more individuals in business attire. "Cousin," Richard called with false warmth. "Settling in." "I see." Eleanor approached them, conscious of Emma watching from the porch swing, with Bandit protectively at her side. "This is a surprise visit," she said, not bothering to hide her suspicion. Catherine gestured expansively, her designer suit incongruous against the forest backdrop. "We've come with wonderful news. Silvercrest Development is planning a luxury resort community in these mountains. They've purchased all the surrounding properties." "They've made offers well above market value," Richard added, his tone suggesting he was doing Eleanor a favor. "We took the liberty of discussing preliminary terms for your inheritance." One of the suited individuals stepped forward, extending a business card. "We're prepared to offer you a substantial sum for this parcel. It's the centerpiece of our planned development. These old-growth forests and natural springs are exactly what our high-end clients want to experience." Eleanor glanced at the offered amount, momentarily stunned by the number of zeros. 6 months ago, such a figure would have seemed miraculous. Enough to buy a new home, pay off medical bills, establish college funds for both children. "I appreciate your interest," she said carefully, "but I have no intention of selling." Richard's pleasant expression hardened. "Be reasonable, Eleanor. This place is worthless except for its location. You're weeks away from having another child, with no visible means of support beyond that paltry stipend. My circumstances are not your concern," Eleanor replied, feeling a strange calm settle over her. The pendant Martha had left her, a silver tree matching the wax seal, grew warm against her skin beneath her shirt. Catherine's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "We know Martha maintains separate accounts and assets not included in the public will. Our attorneys are investigating these discrepancies." "How enterprising of you." Eleanor didn't bother hiding her disdain. As Richard opened his mouth to respond, Bandit suddenly bounded from the porch, placing himself between Eleanor and the visitors. He didn't growl, didn't bare his teeth. He simply stood, radiating a presence that seemed larger than his physical form. "Your stubborn attachment to this worthless cabin is irrational," Catherine snapped, taking an involuntary step back from the dog. "You always were Martha's inexplicable favorite, but even she wouldn't expect you to raise children in primitive isolation." "I believe she would expect exactly that," Eleanor responded, moving toward the cabin. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have matters requiring our attention." Isn't it remarkable how family conflicts can emerge after someone passes away? Money and property often reveal people's true characters. Eleanor now faces a difficult choice: a substantial sum of money that could secure her children's future or honoring her grandmother's unusual legacy. What would you do in her position? Have you ever had to choose between financial security and preserving something meaningful? Let's see what Eleanor discovers next. That night, after tucking Emma into bed and ensuring Bandit was comfortably settled at the foot of her bed as guardian, Eleanor found herself drawn to a section of wall in the main room that seemed to shimmer in the firelight. Running her fingers along the wooden panels, she discovered a barely perceptible seam. The wall swung inward, revealing a hidden staircase descending into darkness. Eleanor hesitated only briefly before grabbing a lantern and making her way carefully down the steps, one hand supporting her belly, the other trailing along the wall for balance. She discovered a basement that defied the cabin's outward dimensions. A spacious room lined with filing cabinets, bookshelves, and storage trunks. Here lay the truth of Martha's legacy: extensive records of business ventures built from the cabin's resources. Sustainable forestry operations, spring water bottling with limited production, patents for medicinal herbs found only on this land. The more Eleanor explored, the more she understood why Richard and Catherine had come so quickly. They had begun to suspect the cabin's true value, not as property to be developed, but as the source of wealth they had never understood. Eleanor's nursing background had taught her to recognize the medicinal value of plants. Now examining Martha's carefully cataloged specimens, She realized her grandmother had discovered compounds that modern medicine was only beginning to understand. No wonder local doctors had sought Martha's remedies discreetly for years. 3 days later, Mr. Peterson arrived, his ancient sedan navigating the rough road with surprising grace. From his briefcase, he produced documents confirming what Eleanor had discovered. Your grandmother established a separate trust for cabin-related income, he explained, spreading papers across the dining table. Unlike her public assets, these funds were never discussed with family. The balance sheets represented comfortable security Eleanor had never imagined. Not ostentatious wealth, but more than enough to maintain the cabin and raise her children without financial worry. Why the secrecy? She asked. Why let them believe this place is worthless? Mr. Peterson's eyes crinkled. Martha believes certain legacies reveal themselves only to those who truly need them. His gaze shifted to Emma, who was teaching Bandit a new trick on the hearth rug. She also understood that those who seek inheritance merely for status or financial gain would misuse what this place offers. Richard and Catherine, Eleanor murmured. Indeed, they've hired investigators to research the property. They've also filed a petition claiming Martha wasn't mentally competent when she revised her will. Can they challenge my ownership? Eleanor felt a protective surge toward the cabin that surprised her with its intensity. They can try. Mr. Peterson's smile turned wolfish. Martha anticipated this. The property transfer is legally unassailable. Moreover, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. There are unusual protections in place. The cabin chooses its keeper, Ms. Wilson. It has chosen you. 2 weeks after their arrival, Eleanor woke to Bandit's urgent whining. The old dog paced restlessly beside her bed, periodically returning to press his nose against her hand. Outside, wind had begun to rise, bending treetops against a sky turned ominously dark. Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. The storm is coming, she said, her voice small but certain. I saw it in my dreams. Eleanor rose with difficulty, her 9th month of pregnancy making every movement deliberate. In the main room, she noticed the warning stone by the hearth, a smooth river rock with spiral markings, had grown uncommonly warm to the touch. The grimoire contained detailed instructions for storm preparation, refined through generations of Collins women. Eleanor and Emma worked methodically, securing shutters, bringing in extra firewood, filling containers with fresh water. By nightfall, the storm had arrived with frightening intensity. Rain lashed against the cabin in horizontal sheets. Lightning split the sky in jagged bursts, followed by thunder that seemed to shake the very foundation. Despite the tempest's ferocity, Eleanor felt oddly calm. The cabin gathered itself around them protectively, the walls steady against wind gusts that would have terrified her elsewhere. It was shortly after midnight when the first contraction seized her, a band of pain tightening across her lower back and belly. She gasped, bracing herself against the kitchen counter. Too early, she whispered. The baby wasn't due for another 3 weeks, but the next contraction came stronger, more insistent. The grimoire had warned that atmospheric pressure changes sometimes triggered early labor. Eleanor tried the satellite phone Mr. Peterson had left, but the storm interfered with transmission. Her medical training told her what to expect, but experiencing labor herself was entirely different. As a labor and delivery nurse for 7 years, she had guided countless women through this process, offering reassurance that everything was normal. Now, alone in a remote cabin during a massive storm, that professional confidence wavered. Even if she could call for help, the roads would be impassable with flooding and fallen trees. Another contraction gripped her, and Eleanor realized with growing alarm that this baby intended to arrive tonight, storm or no storm. Emma found her doubled over in the hallway, small face pale with worry. "Mommy, is the baby coming?" Eleanor nodded, unable to speak through the pain. Bandit circled them anxiously, whining softly. "I'll help," Emma said with surprising composure. "Great-grandma showed me what to do." Before Eleanor could question this, Emma led her to the bedroom where she had already arranged towels and gathered supplies with uncanny foresight. Bandit took up position at the door like a sentinel. As another contraction began, Eleanor noticed a small chest in the corner she hadn't seen before. Inside lay a silver bell with the family tree symbol engraved on its surface and a note in Martha's handwriting. "When truly needed, ring once with clear intent. Help will come as it always has." Between contractions, Eleanor lifted the bell with trembling fingers. Its weight felt substantial despite its small size. "Please," she whispered, ringing it once, the clear tones somehow carrying above the storm's fury. Minutes passed, pain intensifying. Eleanor tried to recall the birthing techniques she taught to patients, but fear clouded her mind. Emma held her hand with surprising strength for a 6-year-old, while Bandit remained vigilant at the door. Then impossibly came a knock. "Someone's here," Emma said, unsurprised. Through the window, Eleanor glimpsed a figure on the porch, an elderly woman seemingly untouched by the raging storm. Bandit trotted to the front door, tail wagging in welcome rather than alarm. Emma opened the door to reveal a woman in her 70s, silver-white hair framing a face lined with experience, but bright with intelligence. She carried an old-fashioned leather medical bag. "I'm Sophia Hughes," she said, stepping inside and shedding her oilskin coat. "Some call me the forest midwife, though I have proper medical training as well." Her eyes twinkled. "Martha sent for me when your mother was born, and now you've called me for your daughter's arrival. How did you get here?" Eleanor managed between contractions. "The roads must be completely washed out." "There are paths through these woods older than the roads," Sophia replied simply, washing her hands with practiced efficiency. "The bell's call carries to those who know how to listen. Isn't it amazing how women have been helping other women through childbirth for countless generations?" Even as a nurse who had assisted many births, Eleanor now found herself on the other side of the experience. In moments of greatest need, unexpected help often appears. Have you ever received help from someone when you least expected it but most needed it? Let's witness this powerful moment as new life enters the world during the storm. Under Sophia's calm guidance, Eleanor found courage she didn't know she possessed. Emma helped with surprising competence, bringing water and holding Eleanor's hand through the worst contractions. Bandit remained a steady presence, occasionally resting his head on Eleanor's knee when pain threatened to overwhelm her. "Every keeper has felt this same fear standing at this threshold," Sophia reassured her. "Yet each found strength she didn't know she possessed. You are not alone. The women of your line stand with you tonight." Eleanor thought of the generations of Collins women who had given birth in this very room, their experiences recorded in the grimoire. Though her medical training had taught her the science of birth, she now felt connected to something deeper, an ancient wisdom passed from mother to daughter through centuries. Hours passed in a blur of effort and pain. Outside, the storm raged, while inside, Eleanor labored to bring new life into the world. "One more push," Sophia instructed as dawn's first light filtered through the shutters. "Your daughter has chosen her moment well, arriving with the new day." With a final monumental effort, Eleanor felt her daughter slip into the world. A moment of breathless silence, then a lusty, indignant cry filled the cabin. "A perfect girl," Sophia announced, her professional demeanor briefly giving way to wonder as she placed the squalling infant on Eleanor's chest. "Born at dawn on the equinox, just as Martha predicted." The moment of contact was electric, a recognition beyond words as Eleanor gazed at her daughter's face for the first time. Tiny features scrunched in outrage at the cold world, fists clenched as if ready to battle whatever challenges awaited. As the newborn's cries softened to whimpers, Eleanor became aware of a subtle change in the room. Thin shafts of sunlight pierced through the storm clouds, streaming through the window to touch the floor beside the bed. Where the light fell, tiny woodland flowers pushed through the seemingly solid floorboards, unfurling delicate petals toward the newborn. "The cabin welcomes its newest keeper," Sophia said softly, witnessing the phenomenon without surprise. "I've seen this only a few times before. The land recognizes its own." Emma reached out a tentative finger to touch her sister's tiny hand. "She looks like great-grandma," she whispered with the simple certainty of childhood. Bandit approached cautiously, sniffing the newborn before settling beside the bed with a deep sigh of contentment, his watchful duty fulfilled. Looking at her daughters, one welcoming the other into their unexpected legacy, Eleanor felt a profound sense of completion. The circle that had begun generations ago continued unbroken through storm and loss and renewal. "Martha," she said softly, naming her daughter after the woman who had ensured their future. Martha Rose Wilson. 6 months later, on a golden autumn afternoon, Eleanor sat on the porch swing nursing baby Martha, while Emma and Bandit explored the garden. The clearing around the cabin had transformed under Eleanor's care. Beds of medicinal herbs thrived beside vegetable gardens, and climbing roses embraced the porch posts with fragrant blooms. Eleanor had discovered her own gifts in these months, an intuitive understanding of the healing plants that grew on the property, the ability to sense approaching weather changes, and most surprisingly, a talent for creating herbal remedies that combined her modern medical knowledge with the traditional wisdom in the grimoire. Local doctors had begun quietly requesting her preparations for patients who hadn't responded to conventional treatments. The sound of vehicles approaching pulled her from these reflections. Bandit lifted his head, but didn't bark. A good sign. Mr. Peterson's sedan appeared around the bend, followed by the now familiar SUV belonging to Richard and Catherine. Eleanor adjusted her clothing and settled baby Martha against her shoulder as her visitors stepped from their vehicles. Mr. Peterson approached with a pleased expression, while Richard and Catherine hung back, their faces unreadable. "I bring good news," Mr. Peterson announced, patting a folder tucked under his arm. "The court has dismissed your cousin's petition entirely. Furthermore, the judge issued a strongly worded rebuke for wasting the court's time with frivolous claims." He handed Eleanor a sealed document. "This restraining order prevents any further challenges to the will or harassment of the beneficiaries. Your cousins are legally prohibited from approaching this property without your explicit written permission." Richard's face flushed with anger. Catherine, however, studied Eleanor with an unreadable expression. "The development company has withdrawn their interest entirely," Mr. Peterson continued with satisfaction. "After learning about the conservation easements and water rights complications, they've decided the surrounding properties are no longer viable for their project." From the house, Emma emerged carrying a bouquet of wildflowers she had gathered. She approached the group without hesitation, offering the blooms to Catherine with the guileless generosity of childhood. Catherine accepted them automatically, surprise flickering across her carefully maintained features. For a moment, the polished veneer slipped, revealing something softer beneath. She fingered a blue wildflower with gentle wonder. "My mother used to press these in books," she said, almost to herself. "Martha, our grandmother, taught her how." Her gaze shifted to baby Martha, who had turned to observe the newcomers with unusual focus for an infant. The baby's eyes, already changing from newborn blue to a distinctive hazel with amber flecks, regarded Catherine steadily. "She has Martha's eyes," Catherine said softly, the first genuine comment Eleanor had ever heard from her. "I'd almost forgotten that look, like she could see right through you to things you didn't know about yourself." Eleanor studied her cousin's face, seeing for the first time the resemblance to Martha, the same proud cheekbones, the same determined chin. Catherine had Martha's features, but had spent a lifetime trying to be someone else. She is Martha, Eleanor replied simply. Martha Rose Wilson, the next keeper. Something in her tone conveyed more than the simple statement, a quiet authority that hadn't been present before. Both cousins seemed to register the change, their postures subtly shifting in response. Catherine reached out hesitantly, her manicured fingertip just touching the baby's cheek. The cabin always did choose its own, she murmured, echoing words she must have heard long ago. Then straightening, she touched Richard's arm. We should go. As they departed without further comment, Mr. Peterson remained behind. From his briefcase, he withdrew one final item, a leather-bound journal with blank pages and Martha's emblem embossed on the cover. Your grandmother asked me to give you this once all legal matters were settled, he explained. She called it the Future Journal, for recording your own wisdom for those who will follow. That evening, as autumn's early darkness settled over the forest, Eleanor sat at the dining table with the blank journal open before her. Baby Martha slept peacefully nearby in her cradle, while Emma and Bandit dozed together on the hearth rug. Outside, the boundary stones stood silent guard around property that had sheltered generations of women in times of need. Inside, the cabin creaked gently, a sound that had come to feel like conversation rather than settling timber. Eleanor thought about the path that had led her here, the grief of losing David, the struggle to maintain her nursing career while raising Emma alone, the crushing weight of medical bills and threatened foreclosure. What had seemed like a series of catastrophes had actually been guiding her toward this inheritance, this purpose, this home. She dipped a pen in ink, finding unexpected pleasure in the traditional method, and began to write. I am Eleanor Wilson, 12th keeper of the Collins legacy. Through loss, I have found more than I ever imagined. Not just shelter, but purpose. Not just inheritance, but birthright. Each woman before me faced her own darkness before finding the light within these walls. Now I add my story to theirs, another thread in the unbroken tapestry of our line. She paused, watching as the ink seemed to gleam momentarily with unusual brightness before settling into the page. A gentle breeze stirred the curtains, though no window stood open, carrying the scent of roses and wild herbs. Martha's favorite perfume. Eleanor smiled, continuing to write as the cabin settled around her. No longer merely a refuge, but a home. Not just for herself and her daughters, but for the unbroken line of women who had found strength within these expanding walls. Emma already shows signs of the gift. Her dreams, her connection to the land, her understanding of things not spoken aloud. Little Martha will develop her own unique relationship with this place. Together they will carry forward what has been entrusted to us. The world outside may change, but some roots run too deep to be disturbed. Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, reflected in the windows like watching eyes, the past bearing witness as the future unfolded one page at a time. Eleanor knew with bone-deep certainty that she had found where she belonged. In losing everything, she had found her way home.